Wham, bam, slam. There we go, guys. Welcome to the Fine Print. I am your host, Caleb Teskey, and today we got a very special interview. This is going to be awesome, guys. Before we get into it, I just want to send a couple of shout outs real quick. I want to send a shout out. You can see right there on the bottom for graphic design needs. You contact Roxanne Bro. I don't want to fuck up her name at High Fives and Low Standards on Instagram. As you can see, she touched up my logo right there, and that shit is looking beautiful. And I want to also thank Brianna Woodward for her original work on the design, and Roxanne brought that together for us so we could slap that on t-shirts and things of that nature. Thank you, Roxanne. It's a pleasure getting to know you. Today, guys, we've got a very special guest, and blang, there's a logo you're not going to see very often on my show. Police Department of New York City. So today, I got a gentleman that I connected with on LinkedIn by the name of Jason Stefano. And well, let's fucking bring him in. Let's see. Bang. Jason.
What's good?
Welcome to the show, man. Thank you so much for being here tonight, man.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. And as I do with all of my guests, before we get into anything serious, would you give us a 5-minute life story?
I grew up in Yonkers, New York, right on the borderline of Yonkers and Bronx. I attended high school. I took carpentry in high school, joined the Marine Corps right out of high school, and the rest is history.
Let me ask you this. Can you put your phone on landscape? Can you turn it sideways? Does that there we go. Yes. Thank you, Jason.
You got it.
So you're born and raised in New York City?
Right outside the city.
Well, I'll call it the city because I'm from the fucking sticks up here.
The people from the city call it the sticks, but it's right on the Bronx and Yonkers borderline. I mean, Bronx and Yonkers they're right there.
Well, Jason, I want to thank you right off the bat here because I've been trying to get an interview with someone from law enforcement for the last year, over a year now, and you're the first man to step up to the plate. And I want to just say thank you ahead of time here before we get into anything serious.
You're welcome. No problem. Thanks for having me. This is the first time I've ever been asked to be on a podcast either. So
all right, both of us. Breaking your cherry here.
Yeah.
Now, as you can see from the title there, you're also a Marine, Jason. And whenever I have a veteran on the show, I like to ask them about their experiences in the military as much as they're comfortable sharing.
I was an infantryman. I was an anti-tank assaultman with 3rd Battalion, 6th Marines in the 2nd Marine Division. I was stationed on Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. I deployed in December of 1990 to Saudi Arabia. I was in the first Gulf War, Desert Storm, Desert Shield.
Yeah.
I was there about 6 months. Saw a little bit of action, had a few bombs dropped on us, got into a couple of little skirmishes. Thank God nobody was hurt. I don't know. It's hard for me to tell a great big story because I'm not a big storyteller. I don't think that I'm anything special. I'm a regular guy like the next.
When you say you saw a little bit of action, could you describe what you mean by a little bit of action?
Well, when we were there, my unit was actually one of the most combat ready units at the time. So we were the first ones to go through the minefield. They had a minefield that was about a mile long, and they were actually still blowing up the mines when we were going through it. We were waiting for them to blow past in the minefield for us to go through. When we got to the other side of the minefield, the enemy started shooting artillery rounds at us. We had to get off our trucks and get in fighting positions, and we wound up taking a whole bunch of prisoners that day. We had a whole bunch of POWs that we captured, and we had to search and I had a pretty hairy experience there. It's fun and nice to think about it now, but in the moment it was a really serious and scary situation. We were searching prisoners, and I was doing the search. My partner was covering me, and as I was on my knees behind this guy searching him, one of the other prisoners jumped up out of the bunch that was waiting to be searched and came running towards us. And all I was thinking was, I'm dead. This bomb's gonna go off. I'm dead. And it turned out that the guy I was searching had that guy's cigarettes, and he didn't want me to take them away.
Wow.
So I almost crapped myself for nothing, but
You almost got into a life and death situation over a pack of
over
cigarettes.
cigarettes. Yeah.
Wow.
And there's a language barrier too. We don't speak Iraqi or whatever language they were speaking, Arabic, and they didn't understand English. So everybody's yelling at him to stop and get down, and he's just still coming. He had to get tackled down and taken care
Did you
of.
guys have a translator over there?
We did, but they were see. I was up on the front lines. We were doing all the fighting. We were capturing the people and sending them on helicopters back to the rear, where they would get interrogated and interviewed by the linguists, the translators.
Here we go. We got a couple comments here, Jason. We got to thank you for your service, Private Caregivers Collective. I'm going to just blast those up there, man. Hey, appreciate you sharing, Jason. I don't know who that is, but they chimed in on my last live stream. Yeah. Carry on, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Aside from that, one night was, I hate telling this story because I'm the one at fault here, but we were on 50-50 watch one night. We were in our dug in and fighting holes, fighting positions. We were waiting for the enemy to come attack us. And it was actually the night that we came over the minefields and they were shooting the artillery at us. It was that night. We got some intel that there was still some people holding up in the trench line, and they were waiting for us to advance, and they were going to attack us. So we were on a 50-50 watch. One of us was supposed to be awake while the other one was sleeping in the fighting hole. I was supposed to be awake, and I fell asleep.
Oh.
And I woke up to, I don't even know how to explain it. It was like the grand finale at 4th of July. There were rockets and bombs and guns and grenades going off everywhere. So they had gotten intel that there were people there and still bunked up in this trench waiting for us to advance so they could attack us. So I woke up in the middle of the night to a recording playing in their language, I guess telling them to come on out, surrender, or we're going to come in and get you.
Oh.
And as I woke up, I just heard the last recording yelling, and then I heard somebody say fire, and just all hell broke loose.
Wow.
That was pretty nerve-wracking because I didn't know what was going on.
How long did you serve for, Jason?
4 years.
Yeah. And what was your reintegration like when you came back home after that?
It's still tough. It's still tough because kind of after that, I didn't go straight into the police department, but it was 3 years afterwards, and I was right into another paramilitary or military organization.
Can I ask you, how old were you when you came back? And how old are you now?
I'm 51 now. When I came back from the Persian Gulf, I was 18 years old.
Wow. You came back and you were 18.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
I just turned 18 December 2nd of 1989.
Wow.
And I went into the Marines January of 1990. And
Damn.
December of 1990, I was in war.
Wow.
after my mom didn't want me to sign the contract because she said, "What happens if there was a war?" And I told her, "Ma, when the fuck was the last time there was a war?" And
So,
then I
so
was
you joined the military sort of against your mom's guidance.
somewhat, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Mothers
How do
know
you?
best, everybody.
I was gonna say, how do you feel now looking back on that?
Pretty stupid.
Mom always knows, doesn't she?
I kicked myself in the ass for about 4 years. Yeah.
Wow. So you come back home. Can I ask you this? And I know this is kind of a personal note, but did you suffer any type of PTSD or any of those kind of symptoms when you came home?
I do. I didn't know about it right away when I got home. I knew something was different, but I didn't, know. And you'd think you're a macho man. You could take everything. You're young. It'll just get better. But when I was in the police department, my my partner's uncle was a Vietnam vet, and he didn't have a car, so he asked me if I would take him down to the VA one day, and I said, "Yeah, sure, I'll take you down." He said, "Bring your DD 214 with you." So I bought it. He took me to a guy who at the time happened to be the head of the Purple Heart Society down on 23rd Street in Manhattan. And I gave him my DD 214. He looked through it. He started asking me a bunch of questions and put me in for a bunch of tests to get done. Like made a bunch of claims for me for different ailments. I went for tests and they diagnosed me. I got 50% disability for PTSD.
What are some of the symptoms with that, Jason? If you don't mind me asking.
It's very similar to, I guess, what people would call or think depression, because it brings on depression a lot of the times, because you beat yourself up because you don't think that you're worth anything. Even after all the stuff that I've done, um, I had a pretty good career as a police officer. I had probably close to 600 arrests.
We're gonna get there. Don't jump the gun.
Yeah, no, you just don't feel a sense of worth sometimes, and a lot of racing thoughts, a lot of flashes of memories going off in my head all the time. Sometimes I don't even know what they actually are. It's just like explosions, flashes going off of memories, but they're flashing so fast I don't know what they are. If that makes any sense.
Huh. That must be tough to deal with.
It is. It is. And I feel like the older I get, the harder it's getting.
Damn. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Jason.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can we sort of talk about how you transitioned? You said there was a little time when you came back from the military before you became a police officer. I'd be curious to know what you did in the interim there and how you ended up with the NYPD.
When I got out of the military, everybody kept telling me, take all the civil service exams you can, take them all. So I just took pretty much every civil service exam that I could think of. NYPD called me first, and I went. Prior to that, I worked as a cable and installation technician for a company. It used to be called Continental Cablevision. I turned out of Ossining, New York, which is upstate from the city. And then Media One bought them out, and then they became Cablevision. I was gone before Cablevision, though. I went into the academy, like I said, December 8th of 1997 is when I went into the academy.
I was a freshman in high school.
And that was actually the same day I went to the Gulf.
Wow.
It just happened to be like that. Weird. And my birthday is December 2nd, so happy birthday.
Can you tell us a little bit about police academy training in the area where you're at in New York City?
For me, the police academy was it was both physically and knowledge demanding. The physical aspect I didn't really have a very hard time with because I was a former Marine. I mean, I was used to doing all of that stuff.
You're probably in good shape.
I was, yeah, I wouldn't say good, but yeah.
All
right. But the classwork was the thing that bothered me because I'm not a good student. But that was the hardest thing I had trouble with. Other than that, it's learning the game. You know,
what type of classwork do you do at the academy, if you wouldn't mind telling us?
Well, we actually learned law. We learned the penal law, the New York State penal law. We had tests on all the penal law definitions and, you know, the subs and all of that, subsections in the penal law. We learned about the procedures and things that you do because every police department does things a little different, which I never got because I think that everybody across the country, we should kind of be on the same wavelength in case there's ever anything and people have to go, like 9/11. You know, you come in and you know what to do because it's the same thing I do back in my home state. So
yeah, which we're also getting to, and you're doing my own segues for me here, Jason.
Sorry.
Maybe we should do that first before we go too much into the policing stuff. I did want to ask you about that because you said that you were a first responder during 9/11. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, I was.
And you know, I'm sure this is probably not your favorite subject either, but I'd love to hear your perspective because I watched that at home. Like I told you on the phone, I was homesick from school that day, and I watched the second plane hit the tower. But I would love to hear sort of how that day went for you and how I don't know. I assume there was a few days.
It was almost like watching a family member die in front of you. It was a feeling that I don't know if I could explain it. It was the worst, probably one of the worst times of my life. I spent many sleepless days preceding that, crying all the time for, just nothing, just thinking about how horrible of an event it was and how many lives were lost. And
that's not nothing, Jason.
No, I know.
It seems like a good reason to cry about something.
Yeah, I don't mean it in that sense. It's just like, you just start crying, just out of nowhere, just uncontrollable emotions.
This is my man, Lou Rinaldi. No way this is your first time on a podcast. He's a natural. Thanks for listening, bro. Hey, and this is my mom's going to comment here, but I'm going to bring that up after. I'd like you to keep going with this stuff, please.
But, it was a really bad time. It was really a really, really bad time. I don't have any words. I mean, I remember we were doing, at the time I was in the police department, but at the time I was in the transit division. NYPD has your regular street cops. They had housing cops and transit cops. I was in the transit division.
How long would you been with the police at this point during 9/11?
9/11, well, I came on in 97, so 4.5, 5 years.
Okay.
And yeah, I remember the day vividly. I dropped my older son rather, off at school, was coming home with my younger son. I was listening to Howard Stern on the radio and it came on and I'm like, this guy. So I put somebody else on and they're talking about it and I was like, holy crap. So
you turned off Howard Stern.
I did.
Because you thought he was
because I thought he was just doing a stupid bit. So I freaking turned it off.
Wow.
And I went to another station, and then I went to, I think, 1010 Winds or one of those New York AM stations, and they were talking about it. So I was like, holy crap, maybe something did happen. So I got home quick because I it was just not too long before that, I think, that somebody crashed a plane into a building downtown, like a private plane. So I didn't know if it was anything crazy. I got home like yourself. I saw the second plane go in. I watched the one tower collapse, and I they were calling for first responders to come into work early. I ran to my sister-in-law's gate, dropped my son off, and went into work. And I probably didn't see my family for about a week.
No shit.
Yeah,
You were working for like a week straight on this.
pretty much.
Wow.
Much. We were sleeping down there, or what happened was we were doing 12-hour shifts. I worked in transit, like I said. Well, no trains were running because half of that tower collapsed one of the stations downtown. So they shut down power everywhere. So we had to get dropped off and picked up by other cops at the stations that we were stationed at. And it wound up being like almost a 14-hour day, from 12 at night. 6 at night to 6 in the morning. And we probably wouldn't get out until like 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. Then a bunch of us would take off down to the World Trade and help dig. And
so you're down there at ground zero, digging through the rubble.
Yeah, with 5-gallon pails.
Handing a
5-gallon pail
to bucket.
Yeah, passing buckets to each other to dump them out and then bringing them back so they could.
Wow.
Yeah, I had a crazy incident down there one day too. We were right there. I think it was Tower 2 where we were. There was a big beam coming up out of the ground, and we were doing some digging there. Somebody said they thought they heard tapping on the beam. So I heard that, and I went running like a couple of blocks over and found a canine officer, and he jumped in his car with his dog. I jumped on the hood. I showed him where to go. We went over there. They put the dog down in the hole, and the dog was giving them signs like if there was either human remains or live people
indicator.
down there. Yeah, so they went down in there. It happened to be there was a huge void down in there. They sent I think 2 or 3 dogs and like 3 or 4 rescue personnel down in there. And they came back about a half hour later. There was a huge void down there. It happened to be one of the parking garages levels for one of the towers. They didn't find anybody that day, but it was a pretty emotional moment because it was like, you don't even know where to be. You're kind of at a level, and then all of a sudden you're up here, and then you're right back down again, and it's just like so much up and down emotion.
That's what it seemed like. Sorry to cut you off, but that's what it seemed like to me. It's just like, where do you even fucking start?
Yeah, it's not easy, man, and that's how it is with PTSD. It's like, some days I tell my family, some days I just don't even feel like being around a person.
Do you feel in any way like your military experience made your 9/11 sort of first responder experience easier?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I dealt with all of that kind of stuff before. It was a real shitty time. I'm not gonna lie. I spent countless days just sitting there staring at the TV, sobbing my brains out. But I think the training from the military, at least the Marines, I can't speak on any other branch of service. I know everybody says and thinks that the Marines are the toughest.
That's what all the Marines say. Yep.
You know what? I think they're all tough in a way. I don't know. I think servicemen should stop all of that nonsense. We all work together for a common goal, and we should fight together. But strength in numbers.
Shout out to Mike DeRusso, former Marine. Well, they don't like to be called former Marines. I'm sorry, Marine in New York City. Yeah, he's a good man. I'm going to introduce you guys.
Oh, cool, nice.
That'd be great. Yo, so you've already been deployed, you've dealt with 9/11, and now you're that's 4.5 years into your police career here. So let's go through the other it was almost 20 years, right? 17, 18 years.
I did 18 and a half.
So let's go from 9/11 through the rest of it. And before I forget, my mom does want to know, did the NYPD teach de-escalation techniques?
They do.
Could you explain
Absolutely.
them a little bit? For my mom. This is for mom.
They
Hey mom, I
absolutely
love
do.
you.
They used to call it, when I was in, they used to call it verbal judo. Deflecting people's words. Yeah.
Okay.
I thought you would find that a little hilarious.
How does verbal judo work? Do some on me right now.
I understand, sir. I understand you're upset, but we got to get.
Now, and now you were in New York during this time of this sort of stop and frisk era. And I'd really love to hear your thoughts on that policy and sort of how that affected what you had to do day to day on your job.
I understood. Yeah.
Yeah, blow it out.
It's a difficult question because it's a touchy situation. I think that the reasoning for it was in good faith. The way it was utilized, I didn't agree with sometimes. If I was out on patrol and I got a call over the radio that somebody just got robbed, male, white, bald head, white beard, black shirt, and blue jeans.
That sounds like you.
And lo and behold, I turn my head and there's the guy. I'm going to stop that guy. I'm going to stop him. I'm going to call up the person that has the victim and ask him to come by and see if this is the person that robbed them. If it's not, I'm going to let the guy go and I'm going to fill out my stop and quit.
But you are going to stop it and hold that guy. Like, yo, you meet a description and we just got this robbery up here or whatever. And we're going to hold you.
And that's what I would do. I would explain that to people. Sometimes people would be okay because they'd be like, I didn't commit no robbery, so I'm good to go. Other times people would have to give you problems and there's really nothing you could do. I mean, it's a common right law of inquiry. You're not really, you don't have the guy dead to rights, so you can't put him in handcuffs.
Let me ask you, Jason, were you comfortable sort of enforcing that policy while you were a cop?
Not when I was told to, no. Because I didn't think it was being done.
Only when you felt it was like when you had a gut feeling or something, or not like yeah, explain that a little bit if you will.
If you have a legit call or you have a description of a perpetrator that's wanted for a string of robberies and they put these wanted posters in all the precincts, and I'm looking at this poster and I'm looking at this guy and I see, and he looks like the guy, and I stop him because he looks like this guy. That's okay. That's a good stop. That's a good stop and frisk. But what people were doing was stopping people just stop and frisk. And then if they found something on them, then they'd be locking them up. That's not a good, you can't do that. Do
you feel like a lot of that? And I don't want to load this question either. Do you feel like it was appropriately applied to people of all races? Do you feel like there was any racial bias in that program?
I didn't. Me, myself, I didn't associate with any of that. Was there? Yes. 100%. I'm not going to say no because there was.
And how often would you say that one of these stop and frisks resulted in you catching somebody with something illegal?
Me, never, because I didn't do it like that.
Okay. All right.
But there was times where I stopped the right person that committed the robbery, and the complainant would come by and say, yep, that's the person right there, and that's the guy that was with them too, and they get both locked up. Absolutely.
Here, I want to put this comment up. Denise D. Caleb, I hope this is the last law enforcement you have on. No need to platform this. And I want to say, Denise, this will not be the last law enforcement I have on because I got Mark Schwartz from the evidence room lined up coming up soon here. So start your own fucking show if you don't.
People hate the police. I don't know why. Dude, I do know why.
Can I be honest with you?
Cop.
Can I be honest with you, dude? I've had a fucking terrible relationship with the police in my life. I'm one of those people that does not like the police, man. They've traumatized me, and that was one of the reasons I was really glad you reached out, because we had a decent conversation, man. And I haven't been able to have that with any other members of law enforcement, and I'm really curious to hear, especially we are going to get to the cannabis stuff here, which was what I was transitioning to, because I'd really like to hear your opinion on that. I'd like to hear if you've ever arrested people for weed, how that sort of went down, again, if you were comfortable with that, and how you feel about legalization moving forward here.
I mean, to go back to what you were talking about, having a bad incident with law enforcement.
A couple.
That was the reason why I became law enforcement.
Really?
Because
so
I had
you've also had bad experiences with cops.
Yes. And
would you care to describe them?
Yeah. The one incident in particular, I was probably about 8 years old, living in Yonkers. A bunch of us playing football on the street. We had a next door neighbor that for some reason didn't like us playing football on the street. So she would call the cops on us. So one day the cops had come by. Me and another guy were out for a pass, and we come running back with the football, and the cops there talking to the other kids, and all I heard was the cop say, "You understand me?" So I said, "Excuse me, sir?" And he raised his hand to smack me, like backhand me. And he said, "You little wise ass." And I was like cringing. He's a giant guy, and I'm a little 8-year-old kid. I'm not big as it is now. I'm only 5'8". But
you're only 5'8". You look bigger in that car.
It's a small car. And I told myself at that moment, I was like, you know what? I want to be a cop one day, and I'm not going to be a dick like that guy. There's really no need for it. And there's a lot of cops like me on the job. It just sucks that people always, it's just human nature. We always think about the negative all the time. We always dwell on the negative, and it's horrible that there's shitty cops out there, but it's not every cop.
Well, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, which we talked about on the phone, was Michael Dowd. They did this documentary called The 5-7, right? And it was Michael Dowd was, if I recall correctly, was providing security for drug dealers. Sounded like some extortion and maybe some robberies as well. And that I believe right there, that documentary scared the fuck out of me, because that kind of cop is the exact kind of cop that I worry about. Like, that guy could do anything at any time, and he does not give a fuck. And it led to, I believe at the end, it culminated in him trying to plan a murder for hire, which was terrifying. And I believe you said you've some of his relatives or something.
His brother was my sergeant.
What's his name?
When I was on the job. We didn't get along too well.
What is his name?
Glenn Dowd.
Glenn Dowd.
Yeah.
And was that stuff that I said about Mike accurate? Did that sound accurate?
From my recollection, from what I've heard, I don't know him personally. I just know the story. He was actually arrested before I became a cop, but he was arrested in the 30th precinct, which I worked in Transit District 3, which comes out at 145th and St. Nicholas. The 30th precinct is like 150th Street, so it's like just a couple of blocks up. So yeah, I am very familiar with the 3030. But
where's the 5-7 in relation to you?
The what?
The 5-7 precinct. That was the name of the documentary, wasn't it? I believe.
The 7-5.
Oh, okay.
Right? I think. I don't know. I think it was a 7.5, but the 5.7 I don't think is actually. There is no 5.7. There's a 4.7.
Maybe I
Some
had
of
a
these
dyslexic moment.
some of these precinct names that they come up with, especially like on these
There it is. You're right.
NYC
It's the
shows.
7.5.
It is.
Yeah. Thank you.
7.5's out in Brooklyn.
Hmm.
That's a pretty crazy place out there.
What's the average type of crimes that you're dealing with as a police officer in New York City for 18 years?
Believe it or not, it's mostly kids, robberies, slashings, a lot of gang initiations, robberies. Uh, I did some plain clothes work for a while too, which was kind of fun. We got to do some prostitution stings and lock up some johns
Some
for
undercover stuff.
proposition prostitutes.
How do you feel about the prostitution being illegal? Because I got to tell you, I think prostitution should be legal as shit. Tell me your thoughts on that, man.
You know what? I mean, I'm not against it, but me personally, I've never partook
Me
ever.
either. But like, it's nice to have the option.
But I mean, if they're gonna do it, why not be clean, safe, instead of nasty and spreading diseases all over the place? Why not do it legally so that they could have tests done and things like that? Yeah, somebody just
Whoever's
answered up.
following
The
us there.
75 is in Brooklyn.
Yeah, I'm gonna whoever that is yeah. All right, cool. They know their shit. Yeah, okay. I was just curious about that. Now, I want to talk to you specifically about the cannabis. Let me ask you first. Do you smoke the reefer, Jason?
I do.
You do.
I do.
Were you allowed to smoke reefer when you was a Marine or a cop?
No.
No. How did you feel about that? Did you smoke it anyway, or
I know I couldn't because if I got caught, in the police department, there's zero tolerance for any drugs whatsoever. So if I would have one day you could come into work one day and they say, Stefano, you have to go out to Queens and go take a piss test. And I got to go, and they're going to be waiting for me.
did that happen a lot?
It only happened once to me.
Oh, that's pretty
And
good.
it was when I was getting in trouble.
Did you pass? Whoa.
I did.
What'd you get in trouble for?
I had a personality conflict with a lieutenant, and he wrote me up for insubordination and a few things, and I wound up getting 30 vacation days taken from me and got put on a year probation, and I got transferred to a precinct.
Oh, so you didn't get the paid vacation?
No. I didn't have a vacation for a few years after that.
Damn. So, what this is going to be interesting here because a lot of people were psyched to see me interview a cop and talk about the weed legalization and see, like you've arrested people for weed, I assume, in your career.
A lot.
Yeah. And
I was actually go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead. Take it.
I was actually I worked for a weed company.
While you were a cop?
After.
So you how many people do you think in your 18-year career that you arrested for possession of cannabis?
For just possession, not something else, and they had it on them? Very few.
What
Like
what were most of the
maybe
arrests? Were you doing like some trafficking bus or some undercover bus or something?
we used to do some of those when I was working plain clothes, but it was more like if you grab somebody for something else and they had marijuana on them, you just add it to the charge.
So you were getting a lot of other bus where you
Yes.
were just spending weed on people.
Yes.
If you had to ballpark it in your career, how many people do you think you've busted for weed?
100?
Regardless, yeah, 100.
Maybe more.
How do you feel about that now?
I don't really feel bad nor good about any of the arrests that I made. Actually, that's wrong. I do feel bad for a couple, but everybody that I arrested did something to be arrested for. I never tried to, it wasn't worth it to me. Why am I gonna say this guy did this, that, and the other thing, and go to court and wind up lying in court and getting fired and losing a pension and everything like that? I get a pretty decent pension from the police department. Why would I want to ruin that?
Mm. So you think like maybe risking your reputation was not worth maybe some of the arrests you might have to.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
But I did work with some people who thought the other way, and they found out the other way too.
When you say some people that felt the other way, I mean, what percentage of the cops you worked with would you say were good cops, and what percentage were guys that you thought were fucking assholes or something?
I'd say 90% of the guys that I work with, maybe even 95% of the guys and girls that I worked with, were on the level.
I think so.
Yes.
All right. Oh boy, someone's gonna yell at me right now. I feel like I'm gonna.
Listen, I can't speak for every police department across the country, and I can't speak for anybody else. I'm just talking about me personally. The people that I've worked with, I could probably tell you maybe 3 guys total out of everybody that I've ever worked with. I actually went to the boss and said, I don't really want to work with that guy anymore.
And you said your department was pretty large, if I recall.
Yeah. It was when I was on the job. There was 43,000 cops.
I believe you said your precinct was like 2,500 or something like that.
In my police academy class, 2,500.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
It's like more cops than we have in the whole fucking state here in Vermont.
Yep.
So you smoke the weed, you've busted people for weed, and now you smoke the weed. And I'd like to know, dude, I really got to ask. I see a lot of cops getting into the cannabis industry. I'm going to interview one, Mark Schwartz, if you're listening from the Evidence Room, which is a cheeky fucking name. I'm going to interview him, and I'd like to hear your perspective on sort of if you think like personally, I'll be honest with you, Jason. I don't think cops have any business in this game. Anyone that served for law enforcement. But I'd like to, I'm not opposed to home grow, by the way. I think everyone has the right to home grow. But
I really believe so too. I mean,
I'd love to hear your thoughts on the legalization and sort of how you juxtapose it with your career as a police officer.
I was ill-informed, like a lot of people. As a kid, I was told it was bad. It was bad. I smoked when I was a kid. Then I was in the Marines. I couldn't. I was in the police department. I couldn't. I never really looked at anybody differently about, smoking weed. When I was a kid, one of my friend's parents used to smoke weed all the time. I never knew what it was. I would just smell like leaves burning. I would say, who's burning leaves? And I was a naive little kid.
I'm burning leaves.
Yeah. I wish I could. I'm working.
I won't tell anyone.
Yeah, right. But I got into the marijuana industry after I got out of the police department. I had a job with one of the 5 big companies here in New York.
What's the name of that company?
I'm sorry?
What's the name of that company?
Pharmacan.
Pharmacan. Cool. What did you do for Pharmacan?
I was their first and only courier in New York.
Delivery.
Yeah, I worked for them for about 7.5 years. I worked with them from the ground up.
And I remember you saying that, and that was the longest tenure I've ever heard of anybody that's worked for a big cannabis company. That seemed like
there's actually a couple of guys still there that were there before me, and they're still going as far as I know. I personally think big cannabis companies are going to ruin the industry,
Why?
especially after the stuff
Why?
that I've seen.
What's your rationale behind that theory?
Because they're not in it for what people who are passionate about marijuana are in it for. They're just in it for the money. And it's sad. I've seen a lot of bad things done to pot and put out on shelves, and that's
What kind
one
of
of the
things?
reasons why I don't work for that company anymore.
What kind of things did they do to the pot? Would you care to name any of them?
Uh, there's there was, at least when I was there, infestation of bugs that I have never seen before in my life. Uh, Not even in the dirtiest places in New York City.
Is this an
Um,
indoor operation?
Indoor, yeah. And with that, we all know comes pesticides. And
So, yeah, bug infestation, pesticide
yep,
usage. Yeah.
yep, mold, botrytis. You crack open a bud and nasty goo comes out of it. No thanks, I'm good. Yeah,
And but you stayed there for a long time, it sounds like.
I did. They were paying me good.
Is that why you stayed there?
That's exactly why I stayed there.
And did you ever come to any of the management with any of these issues and be like,
Yeah.
"Hey, we got." Yeah?
Mhm.
And how did that go?
I went to the CEO.
Did you have to go there first, or did you go to other people that didn't listen to you and you had to climb the ladder?
Oh no, no, I went straight to him because I know him personally. Because I was with the company when there was literally 5 employees here in New York. There's now almost 100. I was I knew them and I emailed them. I emailed the CEO and the CFO, and they pacified me. And a few months later, I got fired for something else.
What'd you get fired for?
A uh, a week before I got walked out, another guy got fired for supposedly threatening his manager. Everybody was talking about a video. There was this video. There was this video. Well, one day while I was in the security office doing my daily routine, viewing back footage of stuff, I ran across this video. It was 2 guys talking in the hallway about 10 to 15 feet apart from each other. No pointing at each other, no yelling. There was multiple people walking by. Nobody was turning their heads to see what was going on. And I made a big stink about it. And I wound up showing the video to somebody, and I got fired for that.
Yeah. Sounds like something I get fired for.
I was the shop steward for the union. I was, causing waves. They didn't like me there.
Did you feel like that in when you were working for the NYPD at all?
I did, and that's what I think. I get passionate about things, and I'm passionate about cannabis, and they are ruining it.
Huh.
And
Do you grow? Are you a grower? You ever grown some weed or what?
I would want to, but I can't yet here in New York.
Yeah. But
I
you
would
did
love
work.
to, so I don't have to buy it.
Yeah. It must be tricky in New York. There's like limited space, you know?
Well, I'm further up from the city now.
We got a nice house up there, Jason.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a standard house. I wouldn't say nice. It's a little less than a half acre of property. It's a small little lot with a
Is it legal
3-bedroom
to
house.
home grow in New York?
It is, I believe, if you have your medical card.
So you got to be a medical patient.
Yes.
Okay. Huh. Are you a medical patient?
I am not.
You're not. One thing I meant to ask you about that I wanted to circle back to was asking about the VA, because that usually ties into this cannabis discussion, especially with the veterans. And I know most of the veterans that I've interviewed have told me horror stories about them just over prescribing opiates to people and things of that nature. And I'd love to know if you had any dealings with the VA or any comments on that.
I actually have, but I've never been prescribed opiates from them. But
Wow, you're the
if any
first.
doctor ever tried to prescribe me opiates, I wouldn't take it. I'm just, I've had Percocets before. I had, surgeries. I don't like that feeling. I
Hmm.
much rather smoke.
Hmm. So are you allowed to like smoke in public in New York or
Yeah.
what?
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's like anywhere you can smoke a cigarette, right? You can smoke a joint.
Yes, sir.
Hmm. And have you ever arrested anyone for just smoking a joint out in public?
I have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah,
And it was a
boy.
misdemeanor at the time.
And so that goes on your criminal record.
Yep.
Ah, damn.
I know.
Mm.
I know. And these are the things that I feel bad about. I don't know if I could be a cop in the city now, you know, after, uh, after having a taste of life outside and I don't know. I did the job, and I did it to the best of my ability, and I tried to be fair with everybody. But it's it's really hard to be that guy that does everything proper because there's so much other shit that goes on.
Well, let me ask you this. How do you feel about expunging people's weed charges?
I mean, hey, if it's legal now, why not?
Hmm. Would you be willing to get behind that if we fucking push that shit?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll sign that.
Yeah. Have you ever met any of the people that you've arrested for weed that got charged? Have you ever linked up with any of them after the fact?
No, no,
No?
I actually maybe one or two people that I've locked up I've seen afterwards, and they were, hey, what's up, man? Give me a hug and everything.
Mm.
I was nice to my the people that I arrested. I wasn't a dick. So people actually, I had a lot of times after I finished processing somebody be like, you were the coolest cop that I ever dealt with. I'm like, all right, well, I don't know why. Everybody should be like this.
Well, it's a great review.
I'm just a human being, man, looking to do good by other human beings.
um, did you ever consider any other career options after you got out of the military?
I did. I love animals. I still think about becoming a vet or a vet tech or something like that. I'm a huge animal lover. I have a bunch of dogs and lizards and stuff at home.
You got some lizards.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. What kind of lizards?
Uh, water monitors.
Nice. We had a little fucking gecko. I let that shit sit on
I
my
have a
finger.
gecko too. My wife has a fat tail gecko.
I ate a bunch of mushrooms one day and I let that shit sit on my finger. This is fucking awesome. Jason, I'm getting towards the end of my questions here.
Okay.
But, you know, I boy, I just want to say thank you for your time. First
Anytime.
of all, yeah. I want to see if we got any more comments here. Okay, I'm not reading rude comments, guys. Like if you're gonna be a dick, Denise, you can fuck off. I don't care.
I don't mind it.
I know, but like I do mind it. You're the first member of law enforcement that's been willing to share your time with me, and I've been trying to fucking find someone like you for over a year, dude. So thank you. And Denise, shut the fuck up, dude. Get your own fucking podcast.
Not a problem, man.
Sorry, I'll get.
I get it. I get it.
It's no guess, dude. You got a great perspective, man. And there's no other way to hear both sides of these stories without talking to people on both sides of the story.
True.
Maybe I'm
There's always
crazy.
3 sides of the story.
Oh yeah.
There's the 2 sides, and then there's the truth.
Yeah, right. I'm sure Denise will be sure to share the truth with us here. I want to ask you, Jason, at the end of every show, I always leave the last word for the guest. So if there's anything we missed or any shameless plugs or shout outs you want to give, now is the time. Thank you. Thank you again for your time. Thank you for sharing your stories, dude. The 9/11 shit, that was pretty heavy. Boy. But this is all you right now.
Like I said, I wish we could just all get along. I don't really have anybody to shout out. Maybe my family, my wife Lisa, my son Nico, my son Jason. I just want to get. I hope that in this, that maybe somebody hears or hears something and relates to something that I have put out there, and maybe help somebody, or gets them to the help that they need.
My man Rodney Leinhart would like to interview you.
Let's go, Rodney.
Yo, Rodney, what's up, man? He's a great man. I'm gonna put you in touch after this, if that's okay.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, we're gonna sign off right here. Jason Stefano, thank you so much for your time. And we're signing off. What's my stupid punchline? The devil's in the details, and the details are in the fine print. Thank you guys for joining us. Take care.
Later, Caleb.
Peace.